Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show, a program exclusively designed to promote reproductive health awareness and discuss fertility preservation options. Here is your host, the Harvard-educated fertility specialist, Dr. Amy.
She's known as the Egg Whisperer.
Fertility expert Dr. Amy Abazadeh.
And you have yet another success story
Just launched by an East Bay fertility doctor.
Hi everyone. I hope you're all having a good night tonight. We certainly are. We're excited to be here. The topic of today's Egg Whisperer show is how to achieve a 100% IVF pregnancy rate. That sounds kind of funny, right? It's like everywhere you look, no one has a 100% IVF pregnancy rate. But see, that's actually the point. So if someone tells you what it takes to have a 100% pregnancy rate, well then, if there's anything you can do on your part to give yourself even a slightly higher chance, well, I think that you would want to know that before you start an IVF cycle. So I want to show you something really, really cool that a patient of mine did for me. So this is a picture of one of her embryos, and that's my name there. And these are actually watercolor images of the two embryos that we transferred for her. And I thought that this was really, really a special way to, for her and me to always remember the embryos that she had transferred. I usually tell patients, take the images that I give you at the time of the transfer, and you can go to like a canvassing website. But I thought this was extremely extraordinary and a very touching gift from her to me. So thank you if you guys are watching. Okay, so as far as giving yourself a 100% pregnancy rate, step one is to become a cat. So there are some very fun fertility facts about cats, and I think Paula has one for me now. Paula?
Every day, 10,000 humans are born in the United States, while 70,000 kittens and puppies are born.
Wow.
As long as these birth rates exist, there will never be enough homes for these animals.
I just thought this was such a cute cat also. Thank you, Paula.
Yes.
So we're not cats. And then what about become a bunny? So fun fertility bunny fact, Paula?
Well, bunnies are more or less ready to mate all the time.
Mate all the time. Did you hear that?
Right. They don't have a menstrual cycle either, so there's no special window during which that pregnancy can happen.
So bunnies don't have to temp. They don't have to check their cervical mucus. Sign me up for becoming a bunny. No.
And they are induced ovulators, which means that intercourse stimulates the ovulation. After 40 seconds of magic, the egg is emitted for fertilization.
Wow. So a lot of patients actually ask me, Amy, do I have to have an orgasm in order to get pregnant? Do you have to have the big O? And I would say only if... We're throwing sperm at each other today. Thank you, Paula.
Yes.
So you have to have the big O in order to actually have a pregnancy. And the answer is no, unless you're a bunny. What about mice, Paula? If I were to become a mice, maybe I would have a 100% pregnancy rate.
Well, it's possible, but here's the interesting thing about these mice. I raised mice way back in high school, and most of them are fertile anytime after 4 weeks of age until they die.
Wow.
We had a lot of mice in the garage, in aquariums,
right,
because of this.
Right.
Because they're never too old to stop reproducing.
So we all know that I'm not a mouse, you're not a mouse, Director John's not a mouse, we're not mice, cats, or bunnies. And so it really takes a human egg to have a baby. And when it comes to an egg, what you have to know is the age of the egg has everything to do with the pregnancy rate. And your egg number has nothing to do with your friend's egg number, even though you might be the same age. So let's say you're 35 years old and you have 10 eggs. Well, maybe 50% of the eggs will be genetically normal. But at 37 or 38, perhaps 25% of those eggs will be genetically normal. And age 40, they will be 10% genetically normal. That would be the rate. So you have to ask yourself, how many kids do you want? At what age are you going to start having children? And then plan for that future family of yours and spend just as much time planning for that as you would a future vacation. Or better yet, your retirement. So other things that you can do to protect your healthy young eggs is don't do things like smoke cigarettes, we talk about those things as egg killers. Cigarette smoke toxin goes into the follicles or the follicular fluid, and those toxins can damage the DNA of eggs. They can also hurt the DNA of sperm. So if you're going to smoke, stop now, or don't even consider picking up another cigarette. If you're going to smoke and be the sperm contribution to the IVF cycle, I tell my patients your pregnancy rates are going to be half that than non-smokers. I know that sounds extreme, and people say things to me like, I know people who smoke all the time and they get pregnant all the time. But when you're having trouble getting pregnant, you want to do everything possible to give yourself the best chance for pregnancy. So the next thing on the list of things to give yourself a 100% pregnancy rate is to see if you have the IVF crystal ball. And I talk about the IVF crystal ball as being murky at best. And so what that crystal ball really refers to is genetic testing. There are a lot of things that you can test an embryo for. And the first thing people think about are designer babies. And no, you can't pick the height of your baby, the eye color, the hair color. All you can do right now with the technology we have is to see if the embryo has 23 pairs of chromosomes, okay? And the technology is only as good as the technology is, meaning we only have as strong of a magnifying glass to look at the big chromosomes. And when I say big chromosomes, there could be things that we are still missing. But until that day where the technology is even better and we can, let's say, see genes that could potentially tell a patient if an embryo is going to implant or not, this is the best that we have. And we refer to that as PGS, also known as pre-implantation genetic screening. So this is the thing. Back to the embryos. So just for those of you who are joining us later. So this is a picture of an embryo. So when you look at an embryo, you can see the different parts of the embryo. And then we describe the beauty of the embryo based on how expanded the embryo is. We describe the part that becomes the baby. It's called the inner cell mass. And we describe the cells that become the trophectoderm. Okay? The trophectoderm, also known as the placenta down the road. So when we score an embryo, we're describing something that's subjective. You're visually looking at it, just like a diamond. But the thing is, diamonds are beautiful. They're beautiful on the inside and out. And just because an embryo is gorgeous doesn't necessarily mean that it also has the genetic integrity on the inside to turn into a pregnancy. So before you do your IVF cycle, talk to your doctor, talk to your partner, talk to the geneticist, and think about genetic testing and see if it's right for you. What studies have shown is that it may increase your time to pregnancy, meaning increase your pregnancy rate, and decrease your risk of having a miscarriage. It's not perfect though. So find out what the pitfalls are before you actually do it. So the next thing on the list is making sure that your sperm is nice and strong. We spend all this time talking about egg quality and having nice young eggs, but it's the same thing that goes for sperm. So we need nice strong sperm cells too. And when it comes to sperm, it's not just about having really good sperm cells and a high count and really good motility. It also has to do with the genetic integrity of the sperm inside. So there are tests that you can do that actually tell you how strong the sperm is without just doing an IVF cycle to see if you're going to have embryos. So we call this advanced sperm testing. So talk to your doctor about advanced sperm testing and do it first before your IVF cycle. So guys who should just automatically do it, or anyone with a chronic medical problem, if you're a little bit on the overweight side, if your age is over 40, automatically those are reasons to do advanced sperm testing, in my humble opinion. If you have a lower sperm count as well. So if it were me, I would want to know if there's anything I could do to make sperm even better. And unlike eggs, where you have a finite supply, and over time they just go down, with sperm, there are actually things that you can do over time to either negatively or positively impact the quality of the sperm. So this was a funny story, true story, so I called my girlfriend. She is a cattle farmer, and I was talking to her. I said, hey, I'm doing this Egg Whisperer show, and the topic of today's show is 100% IVF pregnancy rate. And so she was just talking about her heifers and what they do to inseminate them, and I was surprised to hear that they have a 80% pregnancy rate per insemination. And anyone who knows IUI statistics in human beings knows that our IUI statistic is only about 10 to 15% pregnancy rate per insemination. So if only we were heifers. Now, I'm pretty happy being human right now. But she was telling me all about the sperm catalog, and I just thought it was kind of hilarious. If you look over here, how they display that little area, or I should say large area, on the... Yes, I said sperm again. Thank you, Paula. Yes, there's little sperm again. Anyways, moving on. So this week, in this month's Men's Health magazine, I was in this article about how strong is your sperm, all about this really cool test called the seed test. And so, because this is what I do every day, all day long, even in my sleep, I actually composed a song for you guys tonight. So I need my pitch pipe, so give me a moment, please. I'm going to get my pitch pipe from... You can now do a pitch pipe on your phone. Did you know that, Paula?
I did not know that.
So I just went to harmonize.com.
You want to know the best joke of the night?
What is the best joke of the night?
Cigarettes are a weapon of mass destruction. Destruction. Thank you. That's good stuff right there.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Any other jokes?
No. Guys, post them up if you got the jokes.
Yeah. Well, the sperm jokes never get old with me. So now I'm kind of embarrassed to sing.
No, do
I'm
it.
feeling embarrassed.
Here, hold this out.
No, I'm really no. All right, maybe I'm going to close out the night with my song. I'll just keep talking about how to give yourself a 100% IVF pregnancy rate. Okay. So we talked about young eggs. We talked about genetic testing. So we talked about sperm, obviously. And then the next thing is you want to make sure that the home or the house for your embryo is absolutely perfect. So imagine you have the most important house guest of your life. Like, I don't know who that would be for me. Who would be the most important house guest? Like
Boy George.
Boy George. Yes, Boy George, because that would be awesome. She just wants me to sing. That's why she's saying Boy George. So when that house guest comes, you make sure that all your sheets are clean, that there are no cobwebs anywhere. So I'm just kind of using analogies as to what we do with the uterus. We want to make sure that you've done a saline sonogram or some sort of cavity evaluation, maybe a tubal assessment to make sure that there isn't a hydrosalpinx. But there are also tests that I do on the lining of the uterus to make sure that that embryo is welcome at the time that you're actually placing the embryo. And I call these tests sort of the evite for your embryo party. Yes. I clearly do not have enough time on my hands because this is all I think about, like I said. So the other thing is when you're planning a pregnancy, it just makes sense to want to be in the best shape of your life. Does it necessarily mean that you have to join some sort of really strict boot camp or follow some really, really strict diet? No, but if you feel like you need help with your diet and nutrition, then perhaps see a nutritionist who can guide you as to what a fertility diet should be. Make sure your hemoglobin A1C is normal, your triglycerides are normal. Those are the very simple things that you can do going into a pregnancy, aside from seeing a doctor like me or your local OBGYN for a preconception consultation. Make sure your blood pressure is also normal going into your IVF cycle. These medications certainly can make your blood pressure go up that you take during the cycle. So one thing I ask my patients, and if you're a patient of mine, sometimes you've heard me say this, is find your happy place and go to it. So during this process, there are going to be times where you might not be as comfortable as, let's say, going to any other kind of doctor, because there's certain procedures that just might make you feel cramping, have a little bit more bloating. There might be a lot of blood draws involved in the IVF cycle. So find your happy place and really find it, describe it to yourself. So anytime you feel like you're a little bit more anxious, you can immediately go there and do everything and anything you can to be as stress-free as possible. Float, literally. I mean, there are now float spas all over. There's actually one in the building of our studio. I've been there and I ask patients to go there, and I have patients that have incredible experiences and they feel extremely relaxed from floating. Go to an acupuncturist. I think one of the many reasons that acupuncture can help through fertility treatment is with stress reduction. Studies have shown it might improve blood flow to the uterus, it may improve egg quality, but for sure, I feel pretty good about recommending it for stress reduction. And it's always nice to have another cheerleader on your team. So aside from those suggestions, there are a few things that IVF actually can't do for you. So I want to talk about those things. So IVF stands for is very fun in my world. I try to make it fun. Is it fun? No. IVF also doesn't give you twins. It doesn't. I mean, in the old days, when I say old days, I mean, maybe 5 years ago, as soon as I said IVF, everyone said, no, I don't want to be octomom. Nowadays, everyone talks about having twins because of, Beyonce being pregnant with twins and the Clooney twins. But the reality is studies are actually showing that transferring two could potentially decrease your chance of a healthy pregnancy. And so before you transfer two embryos, really talk to your doctor about whether that's right for you. When it comes to my patients, I give them a choice as to whether they want to transfer one or two. I definitely counsel patients about transferring the number of embryos that will give them the highest chance for one pregnancy, and almost always it's one embryo. The other thing about IVF, it doesn't make you feel like you're sexier. It doesn't improve your relationships. It doesn't improve your sex life. So if you're already having problems with your relationship and sex life, I can promise you that IVF won't make that better. So this would be the time before your IVF cycle to get the help that you need with your relationship, to really focus on finding a way to communicate throughout this stressful process. Because if you remember, I said, I want you to find your happy place. I want you to be as stress-free as possible. And I can promise you that going through an IVF pregnancy to fix your potential problems with your relationship is not going to be the solution. You want to make sure that you have a solid relationship before you go through the cycle so that you feel as cared for as possible and as stress-free as possible. You don't want your stress to be related to the relationship. So I think I'll close out with my song tonight, and then I want to put up I think my inspiration is going to be the sperm lifting weights. I'm asking my director to pull up that picture for me.
And we have questions too.
Oh, okay. Okay.
From the Facebook chat if you want to answer.
I think everyone's going to want to sing along to my song.
Yes.
Paula, here, can you put the lyrics up?
Oh, sure. Do you want me to ask the first question? And then
You can ask the first question. Go for it. What's the first question?
Do you have IVF weight restrictions for your patients?
So my weight recommendation for everyone is I want to make sure patients know what the studies show. The studies show that if your BMI is over 30, your IVF pregnancy rate is going to be lower. Do I discriminate against patients who are curvier? No, absolutely not. But I want people to know that a BMI under 30 gives you the highest chance of a successful pregnancy, lowest risk of having preterm labor and delivery, and lowest risk of something that can cause maternal morbidity and mortality, and that's called preeclampsia. So our cutoff is based on the cutoff of the operating room, and that is a BMI of 40. That's a great question, though. And there are things that I tell patients to do. One of the programs I have patients work with is called bewaitlist.com, just like that, bewaitlist.com. There are also apps that you can use like Calorie King or MyFitnessPal just to kind of help you with the process. And there are also prepared meal programs like thistle.co. All of these things can just help you get to that weight that you want so that you can have a successful pregnancy. But one of the things I tell people is your fertility is not skin deep. We have a finite supply of eggs, so just waiting and waiting and waiting until that perfect weight may not necessarily be the best thing for your eggs and their age. So talk to your fertility doctor about what your goal weight should be and move forward when you hit that weight. And if you're having a hard time getting there, get the help you need. And if you still can't, it's okay. Paul, are there any other questions?
Yes. Can you redo that?
Thank you.
Couples over 40, are there any supplements that you recommend for them?
Awesome. So I call that my Hocus Pocus supplement list. And my Hocus Pocus list is really individualized for the patient. Not all supplements are things that people can tolerate, and it really just depends on what's going on with your whole medical picture. So some of the supplements that I think may help are things like acai berry, turmeric, melatonin, resveratrol or resveratrol, DHEA, prenatal vitamins, obviously, with fish oil, and I'm trying to think, and then CoQ10. That's another one of the supplements that I recommend to my patients. But that's sort of my list. I know there are a lot of other things that people take out there, like maca royal jelly, but I would say that the ones that I just mentioned, I have been using for quite some time now, and I feel like of the patients who I've helped, let's say over 44, 45, and I would say most recently, almost 46, those are the supplements that they were taking. I also use HGH, the drug of abuse of bodybuilders and athletes. It's something that Lance Armstrong has, we heard about that, about him using that. And the reason why I bring that up is he basically had a cancer, had a bone marrow transplant, and had one testicle removed, and he was still able to have a pregnancy. So the fact that he used HGH tells me that it probably does something to help with not only the sperm, but also egg quality. So studies have shown that maybe you'll get a better quality embryo, maybe. And when you're dealing with something that you're working so hard for, that maybe is sometimes worth just taking that extra shot.
And one last one about
Yeah.
PCOS, a
Yes.
topic we've talked about
We
recently.
have. Mm-hmm.
Is it true that you won't get a true response on ovulation if you're taking those tests? A doctor was saying that the LH levels would be off if
Right.
somebody is...
Right. So one of the most frustrating things with just trying to get pregnant in general is figuring out, when am I ovulating? You're doing the cervical mucus checking and the basal body temping, and there are apps that you're following, and there are all sorts of monitors that you can now use. But when you have PCOS, it could be really, really confusing, because unless you're taking fertility pills, or even when you're taking fertility pills, your cycles are really irregular. So at baseline, many women with PCOS have elevated LH levels. And so that can be really confusing, because when you're peeing on the stick to check ovulation, the test can come back positive. So for my patients, if that's something that's going on with you, I would say, come on in, let's take a look, and then we can look at your ovaries. If it looks like you're ovulating, then that's probably that is a true positive. But otherwise, LH timed, those types of tests for women with PCOS, Paula, just not as reliable. And in general, those tests tend not to be as accurate as people think anyways. Okay, I'm feeling very musical.
I think it's time.
I think it's time.
The
Okay.
lyrics are posted, friends.
Oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. So you would think that I'm being dared to do this, but I'm not being dared. I can't believe I'm doing this. I need to drink something. Okay. And this is totally live too. Okay, so, I'm looking at this article, and all of a sudden, all I can do is think of Sheryl Crow's song, Am I Strong Enough to Be Your Man? And all I can think of, Paula, is, am I strong enough to be your sperm? And then I started singing, and then I wrote these lyrics. I don't know if I can do this. This is kind of painful, I think, for people to watch. Do you think I can do it?
You sent it to me.
I did. And then I recorded myself, and I sent it to my closest friends. And then one of them said, you've lost your mind. And then I said, I must sing it then.
Yes, you must.
I must. Okay, here we go. Me, 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 me. Because now everyone's going to sing it. It's
Yes.
going to be like a meme. Okay. I feel like you should sing it with me. Everyone's waiting.
They're waiting.
They're waiting.
They're
No one
chanting.
cares. No one cares. Okay, are you ready? No one knows that if I wasn't going to be a doctor, I would have been a singer. And you're going to be able to tell very soon why medicine was really for me. Okay. Now my heart's beating. Okay. All right. We'll pretend like my slide clicker is my microphone. Okay. God, I feel like an egg tonight. My semen temp spike cannot lie. I need you to take me to full term. Are you strong enough to be my sperm? Oh yeah, people. I just did that. Yes! And now women everywhere are going to be asking that before you freeze your eggs. That was a sperm throw, people. Before you get pregnant with IUI, women everywhere are now going to be asking, whether it's a frozen sperm vial, whether that's the IUI, make sure to pay attention to sperm health to give yourself that 100% pregnancy rate that I want everyone to achieve. So thanks again for watching. I hope I entertained you, even if just a little, and I look forward to seeing you next week for our show. Have a good night.
Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show, a program exclusively designed to promote reproductive health awareness and discuss fertility preservation options. Here is your host, the Harvard-educated fertility specialist,